a long kind of history with JCU's involvement in the Charters Towers region, with a lot of work that Hurriyet and Alan Dale have done around communities in transition, and communities in transition, long story short, is just basically saying our world is changing, and our life is changing, and we need to prepare for the future, how that looks. It could be like with reduced carbon, it could be with diversifying incomes. There's a whole heap of changes coming our way, like it or not. And so this project in particular was sort of as an offshoot of that, where we've worked with Charters Council around looking at building resilience and workforce in the agricultural sector. And again, that transition is certainly a big area in the agricultural sector. And Mick, you probably amongst a few others, but very, very much show that example of transition and diversification. So we really, really thank you for being here this morning and sharing your knowledge. Again, I know there's more people that have registered that haven't popped in, but we'll just go along and assume that they will get here at some point. So to start, it's always very, very important to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands which we are all on. We're all in a few different places today, but we do acknowledge the traditional owners and also their emerging leaders. And so again, thank you. But the aim of what we want to do today is very relaxed. We want to be casual but just have a very, very good general chat. But we are very, very lucky to have both Lisa, Denis, and Hurriyet. Thirdly, Hurriyet is my very close colleague and very good friend. So I tend to sort of forget her sometimes because she's like part of my furniture and family. So, but thank you everyone for being here. What we'll do is during the presentation, if anyone has a question, pop it in the chat or raise a hand or something like that. We have built in some time for some general discussion, so don't feel that your questions will not be appropriate. We will definitely get to them. But to get us started, I think I will hand over, as I said, to Professor Hurriyet Babacan, who has many, 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 many hats. She is a research fellow with both JCU and CQ. Not as big as yours, Mick. Sorry, her hats aren't as big as yours, but she has many hats. She is also the chair of Regional Development Australia Tropical North. And also works very closely with RECO, which is the, now I'm going to be tongue-tied here, Rural Economy Centre of Excellence, and that's with a number of other universities as well. So Hurriyet can probably talk more about her hats better than me, but we have to thank her because she's in Melbourne at the moment, hence the scarf. And we won't tell you how beautiful our weather is. So thank you, Hurriyet.
Thank you, Jenny, and hello, everybody. I acknowledge all of you in the Zoom. Thank you, and I'm very grateful for Denis and Lisa and Mick for their time. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and pay my respects and acknowledge their ongoing cultural and all kinds of contribution to our life. The Rural Economy Centre of Excellence is a consortium of 4 universities, and what we've been looking at is a range of projects from water, irrigation, workforce, digital connectivity, in infrastructure, and in most of that work, diversifying farm income emerges as a key issue. Secondly, in addition to the communities in transition, Rural Economy Centre of Excellence has been doing ground-up regional planning with councils and communities. We have done 14 plans across Queensland looking at climate resilience and particularly drought resilience, but other forms of flood and disaster resilience. And again, the resilience word is associated with diversifying income sources, along with other things. So today, what I thought would be useful is to give a little bit of a background about what we're hearing, what some of the key issues are. And we've got 2 speakers, excellent speakers, who have been on the ground working with people around a number of key issues that are relevant to diversification, and you'll hear from them. So I'll set the scene, and then we can have open conversation afterwards. Just bear with me while I bring up my slide. Can you all see that? You can see my slides? I think I'm losing sound.
Yeah, we can see your slides, but they're not in presentation mode. There they are now.
Just put them, yeah. So basically, I'm talking about diversification at farm level, the key issues and challenges. This is part of a project that Jenny talked about, Charterstow's Agricultural Sector Development and Resilience, which was funded by QRRRF. And basically, it came out of that drought planning I mentioned, where workforce and diversification were key issues in drought and climate resilience. So what do we mean by diversification? At farm level, it's about strategic expansion of the activities that producers undertake beyond their traditional crop and livestock production. It's about value adding to the farm produce. It's about developing new income streams. It's about capitalizing on other opportunities that may come their way. But it's not that simple, even though I'm saying it. Success in diversifying farm income depends on many, many complex set of challenges. And these challenges go across finance, infrastructure, knowledge and technical skills, social norms, and available supports. So I'm going to cover some of these and then give a few examples of diversification at the end. So why, in our research across Rural Economy Centre of Excellence, we have identified that there are different reasons why diversification has been needed by farmers and primary producers, pastorals and cattle graziers. So one is the number of challenges that the agricultural sector faces. This is both natural disasters and climate change, but also market volatility, rural employment challenges, financial challenges, inflation, and cost of doing business in rural and remote areas and infrastructure. However, all of our research shows that diversification is seen as a critical strategy for improving farm resilience in the long term and sustainability, for income stability, for risk management, for creating employment for family or community members. Many people not just talked about their family, but their viability of their communities through an expansion of their diversification. So what I did is, and I haven't seen this anywhere, is I tried to look at what does diversification mean in practice, like get down to the real world. And I've developed what I would call like a model. And this is probably not exhaustive. I didn't have a lot of chance, but looking at what does diversification and how does that happen? And what are we really talking about at farm level or community level or business level? So on the left side, you'll see the types of diversification. And on the right side, I've just given some examples of what people have told us they're doing. So one is going into mixed farming. So they're building on their existing farms. They might have crop and add livestock. They may have a crop and they may add an additional crop. They may also look at changing over their crop to things like medicinal crops. So that is basically still in the farming aspect and grazing aspect, but adding other factors so that diversifies the streams of income. Others have got farms elsewhere. So they rent or buy farms. For example, someone's bought land in the Whitsundays and is growing tomatoes in the winter to supply South Australian markets, Melbourne, Sydney, where tomatoes don't grow, but it grows really well in the north. So they're looking at diversifying their income through additional farms in other locations and spreading the risk, but spreading also seasonality and climate differences. Other farmers have looked at carbon and, alternative land use, changing the land use. And this is where Lisa's talk is going to be really important. How do you change your land use? But there's been a number of examples of carbon, wind, solar, and other ecosystem services. Value adding is another one, which is where you add on processes to either make your product much more improved, create a new product, such as turning raw products into something else, or processing or packaging differently. So it targets a different market and creates a higher order value than the original raw product. Agritourism, I'm not going to say much because Denis will talk about this, but we've heard examples from across Queensland of glamping, camping, farm stays, food, nature-based activities such as bird watching. Another one that I've seen, I'm in Cairns, in the tablelands, etc., is contracting out equipment. So making assets go further, renting out machinery and equipment when it's not in use, dozers or tractors and other machinery. Another way of earning farm diversification has been rental of the buildings that people are not using, things like outsheds for storage, and making use of aspects of their property. Others have done off-farm investment, that is like a holiday unit, or so it's got nothing to do with production, but it's just an investment, or off-farm employment where either one or both parties or children work for another employer. There's been a number of projects around agri-waste, so this is making new things out of the waste in the farms. I'm going to give you an example from banana flour, banana waste, but people have done handcrafts and other things from agri-waste. And then rural hospitality projects incomes. For example, people run catering services or cooking demonstrations or food tasting. So these are some of the ways in which farmers and primary producers have tried to diversify their income sources in different ways. And there's probably others. This is what I've uncovered through our own research. So when you talk to farmers, they say it's not easy, that there are a lot of challenges. So the first of it is finding that investment in capital. Setting up new things requires adopting new technology, shifting high crop values, resources that are hard to get, particularly for smaller scale farmers. So the challenges may include things like limited access to credit, high interest rates, financial knowledge about what's available. Today I witnessed cryptocurrency where farmers are going into cryptocurrency in a big way across rural Queensland. That kind of knowledge and capacity to repay. So one big challenge is around access to initial setup and capital costs. The second set of challenges has been linked with market access and price volatility. A diversified farm operation is sustainable only if it makes profits. But to be able to make profits either in your area or mixed farming or another additional product requires stronger link to market. So people have identified weak market linkages. We identified this in some of our work in Charters Towers as well, particularly access in rural areas to markets, limited market information, access to infrastructure like storage and warehousing and silos and cold storage, infrastructure including roads, transport, digital connectivity, and also particularly price volatility around perishable products and the risks in things that go off quickly like fruits. And these pose additional risks to if you're diversifying in, say, a food aspect. The scaling up is also identified as a challenge. So you might start small, but how do you bring it to a level that is going to earn a lot of profit? So difficult to achieve scale where necessary through the viable processes for diversification. Integrating new businesses into an existing requires scale efficiencies to become profitable, and businesses have said they haven't been able to scale up fast enough or quick enough for a range of these challenges I'm talking about. One of the biggest things that came out is the expensive and the time-consuming nature in addition to what they already do. So this was a big thing, saying it's added double to our workload. And in those initial processes of setup and earning, you're not really getting money yet from diversifying. So learning by doing, and the nature of investing in diversification is a big issue for farmers. Farms often struggle with fixed costs. They can't just quickly dismantle existing infrastructure, marketing, and other burdens. And people have said technical knowledge and technology and other expertise has been a big factor in scaling up. So this leads me to technology and technical knowledge. Diversification often involves unfamiliar practices or new technologies, particularly if you're adding new products. For example, shifting from cereal crops to floriculture or aquaculture is a new ball game, and these may be skills you don't have, or the farmer doesn't have, the primary producer. We have also lost extension support across the regions. There's a lack of access to quality training programs, lack of technical support opportunities on a one-to-one basis, challenges of digital connectivity in many remote areas. These all impede that technical knowledge adoption. And also limited access to demonstration sites where people have been successful. Often primary producers and farmers have to go themselves to see what's happened and fund that cost themselves, because there isn't that kind of access readily available about learning. So some other broader challenges, which I've really summarized for the interest of time: inputs to raw materials, quality inputs. If you don't have good quality inputs, your end product is quality is impacted. Things like planting, veterinary services, fertilizers. We were doing projects out of Weipa. They're trying to start an egg park, but the main animal veterinary hospital is in Mariba, which is a 4-hour drive. Imagine trying to take horses, etc. So these sort of inputs are pretty critical in diversifying. Level of risk bearing, often the farmer has to bear the risk. So risk aversion, because if you often people put their houses up as guarantee, or their life savings or super funds, whatever. So they're fearful of risking that. Past failures, limited risk mitigation options, and lack of certainty with new ventures makes often people reluctant to diversify. And also the levels of insurance are not adequate. So there was a whole big piece around cost of insurance and inadequacy of insurance. They may have insurance for farming, but if you're introducing, say, tourism, that's a different kind of insurance. So there was a whole lot of conversation around the insurance. So that risk bearing is a big factor. Labour and skill availability. Everybody knows that there is significant workforce shortages and skills, technical expertise, but also seasonal variations of workforce availability. Fragmentation, whether government or community, there isn't that lack of coordinated support and infrastructure and planning and development. And I'm hoping Lisa will talk to this a bit. Also climate variability. You plan for something. Some areas can only do 6 months before the wet sets in. Other areas there's dry. Are there enough water for the diversification? And finally, the regulatory aspects of things like land use planning or Vegetation Management Act. So there's a whole lot of regulatory and planning challenges at the local level. So what are people suggesting across the board? What have those farms that have diversified are saying to us as lessons learned? They're saying begin with small trials, use a portion of the land and test and feasibility without risking core income. Also, many of our farmers are aging. The average age of a Queensland farmer is 48 years. So take into account who's in the farm, have the younger ones left. So the life stages before you start to diversify. Determine what kind of risk and debt you can carry. Also, keep simple data so that you can compare the performances under local conditions. Is that scale or diversification? What's the evidence that it's working or not working? Share the information and knowledge. Attend training, demonstrations, farm visits. And also consider before you start whether you want to add to your farm integrated into your farm activities like farm-based or allied or non-allied value adding. So it's important to determine what's your capacity for the type of diversification. More is you try to maximize the farm assets in this process, avoid dependence on single crops or a single market. Importance of understanding consumer trends, and I'm going to give you an example where consumer trends around health has made a big business, a major business success in our region. Identify insurance options. Some people have used government or subsidies to springboard their diversification initial trials. Um, Try to join networks for markets and access to digital markets. Also, supply chains are a major issue because a lot of our supply chains in northern Queensland are pretty fixed and people have been using those, but there are alternatives to look at those. Using technology more effectively and skilling up and determining at the end of the day, what's your lifestyle priority? Do you really want to work hard? Do you want to, because the initial endowment of time is very strong. So these are what we found from practice about strategies in terms of if you're beginning to diversify, start to think about these and put measures in place. Oh, I don't know what happened. I've lost it, didn't I? I've got 2 more slides to go. Bear with me, I'll get back into it. I'm not sure what happened there. You're not seeing my slide, right? When I share it, it goes to my web page for some reason. Is that better? So case study 1, it's out from Southern Darling Downs. It's a sheep grazier, Gordon Smith. He has faced significant challenge to the point of collapse of his farm. And there was extensive studies and case studies on this area. So prolonged droughts and declining wool prices. So traditional sheep farming was unsustainable. They were looking at getting out. They were really in a difficult situation. So at that time, there was a wind farm started by Squadron Energy near Stanthorpe, and the Pikedale wind farm project started. Squadron Energy's got numerous wind farms all across the Southern Downs, so Pikedale was one of them. So Gordon Smith put up his hand to join this with about a number of other graziers. So they agreed for a fee to have wind farms on their property. And basically, the benefits they've seen are financial stability. They get income. Um, they can still graze their sheep, so it's not interrupting their farm. They don't need to do any input. The company's done everything. And minimal impact on the environment. And also, they felt good about contributing to renewable energy. So that's one example. Another example, I'm sorry, I don't know what this thing is doing. It's from far north Queensland, up in the tablelands of Queensland. Rob and Krista Watkins, many of you will know them. They've got a company, Natural Evolution. They saw a lot of bananas being wasted because it either is rotting or they didn't have labour or it didn't meet supermarkets and retail specifications. And at one point, they had 500 metric tons of bananas being discarded, just chucked into the waste. So at some point, they saw green bananas that are drying and flour-like substance in 2010. And I've heard Krista speak many a time on this. So they started understanding that green bananas have a specific health substance that enables gut health and enables digestive health with an aging population, but also a more conscious world. There's a consumer trend towards health. So they built the world's first pharmaceutical banana grade facility, and now they're exporting over the years to 50 countries. They've expanded their products into things like baking mixes, health supplements, skincare products, and even vodka made from sweet potatoes. So they even diversified from what they've started out with. They use the waste from their farms and other farms in far north Queensland. They are now partnering with big organisations like CSIRO and universities to do more research. So they've become tech savvy. They've had to invest in infrastructure, but they've done it in stages. So that, 2010 to 2025 is a long journey. And in 2018, they won an innovation award, AgriFutures Rural Women's Innovation Award, and a Gold Edison Award for innovation. So this is an example of agri-waste being turned into a company that's diversifying to the point of very good success. So I've come to the end of my presentation. So the conversation here is, what are the challenges for farm income diversification in Charters Towers, and what actions can be taken to support farmers to diversify?
Thank you, Hurriyet. Thank you very much. So we will throw that open to anybody that wants to comment. Just raise your hand and I'll open your mic for you if you like, or put a comment in the chat. But I will sort of talk about some of the work that we've been doing in Charters. And Ashley, I know you're online. Feel free to please jump on in. And of course, one of the issues we've come across has been workforce. Projects like copper string and others, it's unpredictable, make the challenges of finding workers even more complicated. In terms of the diversification, we've also heard from a lot of people that they're looking at different ways to solve that. One example being Red Hill Farm that use transient work, so-called transient, like grey nomads and travellers, to assist with their workforce on the property. And others are looking at immigration, for example. So that's some of the local we've heard around the diversification, ways to overcome some of the challenges. So I'm sure that others would have an opinion. Ashley, did you want to jump in here and say anything? You should be able to have your mic open now.
No, good. Yeah, you've covered it with the workforce and thinking, I guess, outside the box in that sense and diversifying.
So if anyone who doesn't know Ashley, she's the Economic Development Officer with the Charters Towers Council, or Regional Council. Ah, there you are. Hello.
Hello.
Great. So has anyone else got any comments or questions, or what they see as the biggest challenges? Because we know there's a lot. We know we also have issues with supply chains. Recent flooding will definitely highlight that again. There's also interesting things like one of the examples Hurriyet gave was the wind farm. Now we just know that a whole heap of wind farms were cancelled for down around outside of Rockhampton. But what I've heard is the missing piece for that was, even though it had the environmental licenses, it didn't really get the social license. It didn't really connect with the people on the ground whose backyard that it was going to be on. And that's an important component as well. It's not only creating the diversification, but it's sort of selling it as well in some ways. So, I'm sure we'll hear from Mick and his experience later, but he doesn't just diversify, he becomes a marketer. You're not just employing farmhands anymore. Suddenly you're employing a different range of people to create your product. And Mick will tell you his love of jargon and terminology. Suddenly you've got a whole heap of, you've almost got a different language that you need to use. But there are other challenges as well, as the changing climate has an impact as well. Heat stress is coming our way, like it or not. So that's going to make it even harder around diversifying incomes as well. So if anyone has anything else,
I just
they'd
wanted
like
to
add.
add that Charters Powers region went through about 18 months of work, and the current mayor was the mayor then. So around looking at where are they now in terms of pastoral, in terms of some mining, etc., and where do they want to be in the next 20 years. And so some priority areas were developed through this communities in transition. One of them was tourism, another one was health and community services, diversifying the small business, like having a more dynamic small business sector, and then the workforce piece was a big factor. So we've now, as part of this project, set up a employment and skilling network that's going to meet this Friday for the second time. That's all the education providers. We go from JCU, there's TAFE involved, councils involved. So looking at that pipeline so that even if you're diversifying, whether it's agriculture or other areas, that there's a pipeline of workers within the region, and that young people are not leaving the region, because that's a big issue for some of the regions. So there's some things underway in this project that hopefully will continue on beyond the life of the project. The project's going to end by the end of June. But part of it is this idea of, where does the community want to go in terms of their future, and certainly health and human services was identified, tourism was identified. So if you're wanting to diversify your farm, you would look at what's happening in the region around those, because they would then offer some valuable allied support, if you like, if you're part of a bigger set of initiatives, the planning processes, the resources, the skilling, the knowledge and the sharing will be much better than if you had to go alone, as Krista found out, because nobody was doing banana flour when they started. Now there's lots of them up in the tablelands doing banana flour, but they were the trailblazers. So I think it's important to kind of see what else is happening in the region. And these were the kind of strengths that the region identified at the time.
Thank you, Hurriyet. That's really good. Actually, I'll just add to that, Rod and Krista, and the banana flour. The actual vodka is made from sweet potato. It's very good. But one of the interesting things about those guys is that they were struggling to manufacture enough product to meet demand. So they did what we all do. They thought about going overseas and making it in Asia somewhere, making the product to keep costs down and everything like that. And they went through this whole process of looking at it and decided that no, they're going to build a factory, they're going to invest, and they're going to do it right here in far north Queensland. So they're up on the Atherton Tableland. So that was really good. Like, they thought they'd go one way, and when they actually had that deep dive, it was no, we can do it right here on our own land, our own farm. So that's a really, really good story. And I can put some links if anyone's interested in the chat, so people can check out a little bit more about Rob and Krista Watkins, but if you don't know them. But we will hand over now to Denis, waiting patiently there. Hi, Denis. Denis is an associate professor in tourism and hospitality management at JCU. He's had a very exciting life. He's worked in a lot of remote places, including Timor-Leste and other international. You're in Hong Kong, I think, for a bit as well. Victorian originally. You are Southerner by birth, or by did you start off in Australia in Victoria?
Actually, my first arrival to Australia was to Cairns in 2007, but then I lived in Melbourne for 5 years.
Oh, well, we're glad you came back. So thank you very much. And of course, as you can tell, his love and passion is around tourism and tourism management, and that fits in very well with what we're talking about today. So over to you, Denis, and thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. So I was asked to talk a little bit more about agritourism and tourism as a strategy for the diversification of farms. So basically, agritourism is anything that joins together elements of tourism and agriculture. So it's a very diverse type of tourism that can involve a range of activities. But what is important is that these activities either generate income, educate the public, or entertain the public. So through involvement of visitors into some form of agricultural activities or experiences. Right? So what is interesting, it does not necessarily need to be income driven. Also educational experiences like connecting with school kids, school groups would be also part of agritourism. And as you can see on this diagram, there is a range of a lot of different opportunities to be involved in tourism. You do not necessarily need to bring people onto your farm. Even taking your products to the markets can be a part of agritourism, because visitors come to the farmers markets. It's a tourist experience for them, and they purchase products over there. There are other opportunities on the farm that could be like fruit picking, horseback riding, meeting the animals and learning about the animals, staying on the farm, spending nights, several nights on the farm, having hospitality, food and drink experiences on the farm, or having classes. People are actually increasingly interested in learning about where the food comes from, what happens to the food, how it's grown, what are the stories behind the farmers that grow their food. And so, especially because our life experiences now for majority of population is that our source of food is supermarket, we really want to connect back with the origin of those foods, because it's quite foreign to us. And the way to think about agritourism and why to get involved into tourism, or one way of thinking about it, is considering tourism as a reverse of taking your product to the market. So instead of taking the product to the market, selling it to the supermarket chains or retail shops, you get your customer into your production, to your farm, right? So instead of trying to reach the retail shops, you get the consumer back to your place. And then you add value to your products. You're not only selling the commodity, like let's say dry tea leaves for $7 for 250 grams. You're providing an experience. You provide some services and experiences. Let's say you prepare Devonshire tea and you sell that for about $30, right? So that's the way to think about why would I get involved into tourism. And agritourism is growing rapidly around the world. The United States of America are leading that space, but it's also growing in Australia. And the expectation is that it will be an $18.6 billion industry by 2030. And you can see that the growth is high among the international visitors. And one reason for that is because agricultural products from Australia are very popular overseas, and it provides another motivation for people to travel to Australia and learn where the food that they buy comes from. Where is that meat? Those beautiful steaks come from? How do those farms look like? And connect with their food sources. Okay. Australian regional tourism is the big body that has been promoting agritourism in Australia. And you can see that it is present in all the states. And currently it generates more income in Victoria and New South Wales, also more populous states. But we're also doing quite well in Queensland, but probably we could do much more of tourism, considering that Queensland produces so much food. Okay. And also, Australian regional tourism has come up with 6 priorities for further developing agritourism. And some of these overlap with the success factors and challenges that Hurriyet already mentioned. So Australian regional tourism wants to support sustainable and inclusive farm diversification. So coming up with ideas on how the farmers can support themselves differently, how to engage into tourism sector, and also importantly, how to involve First Nations people in agritourism. They also look at the issues related to the employment and the skills available to contribute to agritourism and skills required in regions. They look at developing distinct, unique, and good quality, good standard products, because tourists are quite picky, so you have to provide a good quality product. Connecting with food and drink, because food and wine is also a very important part of tourism offerings around the world. And this is where Australia can also demonstrate really its brilliance. Collaboration and partnerships are really important. Hurriyet mentioned marketing already, and I'm sure we'll hear about it again. It is very difficult for an individual farmer to reach domestic and especially international visitors. You need this support. And usually, especially in our region, people go on road trips. They're self-drive, free and independent travelers. So they need a lot of information to reassure them where to drive, where to go, what to see. And that's very difficult to do individually. So collaborations and partnerships between entrepreneurs in the area with the local and state government and international tourism marketers is quite important to succeed. And regional tourism provides also the support and leadership for growth in this area. Just last week, the state has released its Destination 2045 plan. So that is delivered from the Queensland Department of Tourism, Science and Environment and Innovation, DETSI. And agritourism is mentioned several times in the document. So within the state government is also focusing on further developing this type of tourism to diversify the farm economies, but also to provide additional experiences that are in demand in Australia and around the world. And they plan to work with local governments on identifying how they can support development of agritourism, recognizing that there's quite a lot of bureaucracy involved and making it easier and simpler to enter tourism for those organizations and businesses that want to do so. And I also would like to mention some of the key issues that we can further discuss later on. So one of them is regulatory and legal issues. So you may be restricted due to the zoning in your area on what you can do with tourists. It's always good to connect with your local council on the zoning permits and land use regulations. Then there are different permits that you may be required to obtain on short-term accommodation, on serving food and food safety, or serving alcohol, responsible service of alcohol certification. Many of the certifications that you need to do, you can obtain online through TAFE or other providers, but the permits is where there might be a little bit of challenge. And as Hurriyet mentioned, insurance is a big issue, and it's really becoming a very big challenge for tourism sector, especially in our region that is prone to different adverse weather events. And there could be some other impacts on farm operations. So, it's extra demand on the workforce, but it also may require capital investment depending on the products you want to develop. And remember, it has to be a good quality product. So if you develop an accommodation, it has to be of a good standard, it has to be clean, sanitation needs to be provided. You need to think about the supply for water, especially, right? If you're in a drier region, tourists tend to spend a little bit more water that they should. So you need to be careful about those really practical things. If you are off-grid, you have your own septic tank, what is the capacity? Can it can it absorb additional demand? It could be interfering with farm operations. Tourists tend to be interested in looking around, and they may scare some of the animals, or there might be an incident if the animal is agitated. And there might be biosecurity issues with weeds and pests. Tourists might be hiking through somewhere, bring the dirt on their boots, and then you may have other challenges. So also you may want to think about, well, which areas I can restrict from visiting, from visitors, which I can accept visitors to roam around. Okay. Visitor expectations are very important to consider what visitors want to do on the farm. They're interested in stories, right? So you're selling a story. They want to learn about, in an entertaining way, about farming, about your farm, right? And they want to have an authentic experience. So they want to connect with farmers, to understand this lifestyle, understand how they work, what they do, how they looks like, right? And there's more interest in low impact and sustainable practices. So if you're in intense industrial farming, it may not be a good suitable option. They want to see cute little baby goats, basically. That's the image that the tourists would have. Service standards have to be good, good hospitality, and also reliability of service. One of the challenges is because of different events, there may be disruption. You cannot accept visitors a certain period of times, but these potential tourists need to know about it. That it's really bad if a tourist drives several hours, reaches your place, and it's closed. They put a bad review on TripAdvisor, and then the business may suffer in the longer term. Another issue to consider is seasonality, right? So we have fluctuations of visitor demand. Drier months usually have more visitation, wetter months less visitation. So you may open your place for visitors only in the high season, maybe only on specific days, not through the whole week. Maybe only on school holidays if you're especially focusing on more educational type experiences. Specific events, maybe people can book weddings at your place, and you work with one of the event planners to stage weddings at your location. And you can also consider whether you work with general public, so your place is open to anyone, or you work through groups only through tour operators. Workforce is, of course, a challenge. There are a lot of different specific training provided through, for example, Queensland Tourism Industry Council, QTIC. Then TAFE provides hospitality and tourism courses. JCU provides hospitality and tourism courses as well. Some of the shortages can be addressed through working holiday makers. There's some similarity, and a lot of backpackers come up north for the 88 days regional visa requirement to extend their stay in Australia. But of course, that impacts on the retention, right? You keep getting new people you have to train, and so it can become very time demanding. And also relying on outsiders working on your farm when you're developing a tourism product inhibits this issue of authentic experience. So remember, visitors want to meet the farmer, right? Not backpacker from Europe necessarily. Marketing, as I mentioned, very important to work together to develop tourism routes, where and how tourists can travel through the region and experience a region as a whole. Very important to keep up-to-date information. So in Atherton Tablelands, they have been trying to do that. And despite already quite a long history of agritourism in the region, they still have challenges in marketing the region and providing accurate, timely information. Partnerships with tour operators can be also a challenge. So, when tour operator develops their itinerary or their tour, they're thinking about the timing and the schedule that is suitable for them. And it may not coincide with the best times for the farming community. Okay. Digital presence is very important, and now tourists find most of information through social media, through Instagrams and TripAdvisors and such as well. Okay, so lastly, it's very important to work together. Reach out to your regional council, to Townsville Enterprise, to your Queensland organizations, Australian Regional Tourism, QTIC, and Queensland Department for Tourism, Environment, Science and Innovation. Okay, so that's a brief overview of agritourism. Thank you for your attention. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Denis. Really, I learned a lot. A lot of those numbers were really, really good, and the recent was very, very interesting as well, from the tourism perspective. Does anyone have any questions for Denis? I think Lisa. So if anyone, I think there's a lot we could ask you, Denis, but I think what we're very, very fortunate to have is a real life example of what you've just talked about in the terms of having Mick with us. So for many of you, I imagine Mick doesn't need an introduction. Let me just make sure we can. You should be able to turn on your microphone, Mick, but I will give him one for the people who haven't been fortunate to go and visit. But Mick, and alongside his wife Linda, has spent over 2 decades breeding Texas Longhorns on their 445 hectare property. They like to bring a touch of the American West to rural Queensland. Mick, you've got a bit of background noise, I think.
I don't know, maybe what does it sound like?
It's better when you talk, so we'll just persevere with it. So anyway, but for the last 16 years, they've been welcoming visitors to experience a unique slice of Texas, offering an authentic blend of cattle culture and country hospitality. Mick is also, in terms of diversification, he's also a very skilled saddle maker with a very big reputation for craftsmanship rooted in tradition. But basically he and Linda have lived and breathed the realities of farm diversification for many years now. He doesn't have any issues with TripAdvisor reviews, Denis, you'll be pleased to know. They're a very, very solid 4.9 out of 5. And I just pulled out one review because some of them, the reviews are really good, like just for a good read, have a look at Mick's reviews. But one of them is a trip back in time, projecting to the future. And the review is the best experience ever. Fantastic history, wonderful owners, hilarious dad jokes, wonderful morning tea, a complete package. Thank you very kindly for the experience. So that's the level of reviews that Mick and Linda received. So I'm going to throw over to you, Mick. And again, thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I feel a bit, after following Hurriyet and Denis, I do feel a little, it's like a trip back in time, because this really is my first rodeo, okay? Doing one of these. Yeah. I don't have any visuals, but I can tell you our story, how we got started and everything, and where we're at now and why we do, and sort of, I guess, how we do it. But just quickly, you mentioned TripAdvisor. We've had, getting way ahead of myself now, but because I'll only forget it unless I talk about it now. We've had major issues with TripAdvisor, and one was we could never change our description on TripAdvisor, and it didn't matter. So I've drawn a line through it. So I don't even look at our TripAdvisor reviews now. I focus on all our Facebook reviews and our Google reviews. So I'm not saying it just hasn't worked for us. I mean, we've obviously had good reviews, but so it was a bit of a weak link there. So as you know, it's difficult to contact TripAdvisor. So we've done our best. So maybe after today I'll go back and have another look at it and see if I can change our actual product description. But it's exactly the same as what it was in 2009 when we set it up, and we've changed a lot of stuff since then. So, but that's another issue. So, okay. Well, our story is, and I don't want to bore you too much, but I grew up on a cattle station up around outside of Georgetown. It was a property that my grandfather owned, and my parents sort of inherited from dad, inherited from his father, along with mum. They ran that property. I was one of 5 brothers, and I was always, it was the old West that kind of, was my passion, and I just loved it and, lived it and breathed it all my life. Got involved in rodeos, and much to Dad's horror, more than my share of injuries, and started saddle making. That was another, I always worked with leather as a little, even as a child, and moved into saddle making, taught myself how to build saddles, and then crazily enough, it looks like I could make a living building saddles. So decided to leave the cattle station, and we bought and I brought back memories a minute ago when I saw the map of the tablelands. We bought a little place between Mareeba and Dimbula, a 115-acre property there, and I was saddle making full time. We'd go to rodeos, so that was our life. Saddle making, rodeos. We had a handful of cattle, which you couldn't have many cattle on 115 acres. And then back in the late 90s, we decided, mid to late 90s, we decided let's give this Texas Longhorn breeding a go, because we love the animals, and went through the long-winded process of obtaining genetics. We imported frozen embryos from New Zealand, of all places, full-blood Texas Longhorns. Just cut in there a little bit. The first Longhorns I ever saw were in New Zealand, of all places. The first, and I saw Longhorns there before I ever saw them in America, and that kind of got me hooked. So that's how we started breeding our first full-blood Texas Longhorns, and we did that at Machilba. We moved to Charters Towers in 98. Bought the property we're on now. We added a little bit more land to it, so we ended up with 1,100 acres, or the 454 hectares, I think you said. So then we I was still saddle making, rodeoing, and then it was almost like, we got out of bed one morning and said, let's give tourism a go, because we only had a small property. 1,100 acres isn't very big around Charters Towers, so you couldn't really make a living from your property. And I could see a few headwinds coming with the saddle making, for different reasons. There was more and more people making saddles, and it was going to be a little bit more difficult. So we thought, let's give tourism a go. We saw, a lot of people traveling through Charters Towers, and we knew we could really apply a point of difference with our Texas Longhorns. And to make it even more different, we decided to do it via horse-drawn wagon. So, you know, I built the wagon. I was fortunate enough to have the skills to do that, and also the harness. And we started our Texas Longhorn Tours in 2009. Just something that we wanted to do. We certainly started small, and we went from there. So we kind of, you know, we just sort of built from the ground up. The old saying, you got to crawl before you walk. And I tell people, but you can crawl fast. So that's what we did. Then we added, I remember it was one of the kids on one of our wagon rides said, you know, this is kind of like it's like being on safari. So that sparked an idea in my head. I thought, we're going to buy like a 6-seater buggy, put 2 extra seats in the back, and we'll add another little mechanical arm to what we do here. You know, it's a low impact. You know, it's what I related to so much what Denis said. You know, it's like almost like I wrote that for you, Denis. It was really, you know, spot on. And so we want to do it in a low impact kind of a way. Then we called that, we went from Texas Longhorn Wagon Tours to Texas Longhorn Wagon Tours and Safaris, thanks to that kid. And then as more and more interest, as people become more and more interested in the safari side of what we do, we added another buggy, then another buggy. And then when we got super busy after, you know, the COVID shutdown, we bought the 4th buggy. So that allows us now to take 31 people out at a time, including, you know, the person leading the tour, which was typically me or Linda. Now we have Zeta working for us. So she's out there with a group of people as we speak. And we have some of the guests drive the other vehicles. So it becomes very interactive, and we still retain the wagon. We still do a wagon tour once a week. So we sort of can't give that away. It's like almost like selling your saddle, you know, we don't want to do that. So, you know, I think our success has been, you know, our attention to detail. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that's super important to us. You know, when people comment all the time on how the place is presented, you know, I could not count the amount of times somebody has not just paid us a compliment on the way the place is presented, but how sometimes they go to properties and they're not presented well, you know, whether they're just visiting or they're actually paying to be there. So I think that should just be a given that, you know, and so that's the first thing. But our biggest thing that's made us so successful, I think, is our point of difference. You know, Charters Towers we were almost embarrassed when we started our Texas Longhorn Tours, thinking, how can we, you know, what's gold about Texas Longhorns? You know, Charters Towers is known for gold, you know, like nobody's going to come and, you know, want to look at the Texas Longhorns because they're looking for gold experiences. But I tell them that you may not find any nuggets of gold here, but hopefully you'll find a few pearls of wisdom. So it's and that's, so we just focused on that. And you know, the Texas Longhorns are what attract people here. You need something to, you know, to get people to come and experience a product, and then that gives us opportunity to tell people the story. You know, the story about the Texas Longhorns, their history, and you know, we're so, you know, I say to people every single day, you know, that we thought there'd be enough. We thought after about 2 years, anybody in Australia that wanted to see the Texas Longhorns would have already been here. But man, they still keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So it never ceases to amaze us. So it's, you know, to give ourselves a little bit of a credit, I suppose, it is all that groundwork and that attention to detail. So, you know, it's not a an extraordinary story, our story, but it's, I think something that a lot of other people could certainly do. So it's, webinars and forums like this here that we hope, at the stage of our career, that we can inspire somebody else, or in effect help somebody else to get, maybe take that plunge. It is a lot of fun. I was talking to Jennifer the other day about this and said, it's we enjoy the company of people. It's really important. Nobody should, if they don't like people, or they can't find a way to interact enjoyably with people, maybe do something different. Or if there's still something you want to diversify into, find somebody that can, because that's so important. I mean, this is our 17th season, and I still get excited to see those smiling faces, even on those cool mornings like this morning. So, I don't know. I guess if somebody got any questions for us, I'll probably think of something else that I missed. Trying to give you the short version, of what we do. So.
Well, I don't know, Mick. I think we got some pearls of wisdom from you already. My favourite quote was, "You never get a second chance at making a first impression." I actually have 2 questions for you, and one of them is, does the kid that's talked about the safari get free entry for life?
No, but the fellow that wrote in our business book, "This is a great place to get horny," what does? Because that's probably the most, our most sold stubby cooler. But it's, I think I told you this story. I told the story today when we were chatting on the phone, but it's worth repeating. And I remember those little snippets from people, and one was that story, and I'll repeat the story I told you the other day. Was a lady said to me, this was only about 2 or 3 days ago, and she was full on. She used to ask so many questions, and she really wanted to dig into what we do here. So she asked me, she said, what do you love the most about what you do here? What's the thing that you love the most? I said, talking to people like you. I said, we really enjoy the interacting. I said, the Texas Longhorns get you here, and of course we talk a lot about the Longhorns, but it's interacting with people like you. And she said, what's the thing you dislike the most? I said, saying goodbye to you. And I meant that because, we only have these people for 3 or 4 hours. So it's hopefully they can get every little bit of us, and we can get as much out of them. And, and we do remember those. It's important, and because, I remember at the Tourism Awards a few years ago when Pricey won I think he won the same award that we won last year in 23, the Richard Power Award. And he was talking about when he started as a, working in radio in Townsville, and his employer said, people will forget what they saw and forget what they've heard, but they always remember how you made them feel. And that's what we kind of, and we'll continue to do that. If that fire ever goes out, well, we'll just quit, or I don't know, we'll up into the sunset.
No, thank you. I mean, I was going to also ask you for a dad joke, but a great place to get horny kind of qualifies for that, I think. So
that's a granddad joke. Okay,
that's a great. I think Hurriyet has a question.
I had the dad joke too, but so maybe we could have one. Mick, you did a wonderful job of representing your business, and you're obviously very passionate. I think that's at the heart of it. So now you've got my curiosity piqued, so I have to come down and check it out when I'm next in Charters Towers. What was the biggest challenge for you, and how did you address it? Like, you make it sound easy, but I'm sure it wasn't that easy. What was sort of the biggest thing for you?
There was challenges, of course, and I'll probably, instead of just talking about the biggest challenge, maybe talk about several challenges. One was not knowing what to do. Like, I knew what we wanted to do, but didn't know how to do it. Like, because it was like some big spooky thing. There's getting into tourism, you know, like, how do you get into it? And we thought the easiest way, you know, the only way around it was right through the middle. So what we did was we just started doing it, and we figured, let's learn job. You know, I know it's like, it's like metaphor and cliche central here, like they were saying, fake it before you make it. Is so we had to, that's all we had. You know, we had no, you know, there was no central of information, you know, that we could find out what to do. But I reckon our biggest challenge though was, and all that's changing too, by the way, like things like this here today is just, you know, somebody can go and see what Hurriyet and Denis have put up there is just, it's just gold. It's just gold. But I think the biggest challenge for us, and it's still a challenge that doesn't go away, is working around the weather. Now, for us, because it's experience on our property, so we have to, and I tell our guests this every single day, that we prioritize things this way. Our land and property comes first, our cattle come second, our visitors come third, and we come fourth. And if we do it in that way, we can make it all work. Because if we decide that the visitors are more important than the, you know, land and property, then we start running out of season. We starting too early or finishing too late in the year. Then you end up with an overgrazed situation instead of a place that's presented like ours, which is, you know, it's presented immaculately out in the paddock where everybody goes. So working around, you know, we have no, put it this way, I also tell them that we have 100% control over the amount of cattle we have on our property. We can control the stocking rate, but we can't control the weather. So we have to work match our stocking rate up with our carrying capacity. Now that has nothing to do with actual tourism, but it's important because our product is our cattle presented in a, you know, it's like someone owning a restaurant and they can't find a chef. They, you know, no matter how pretty the signs are, they're not going to have too many customers. And same with us. So that's it. That's our biggest challenge, and nobody can make that one go away except the, you know, the weather. So, but everything else is all work. Everything else is just logistics, you know, seriously, and work. You know, it's that. I mean, we can make everything else work. No worries.
A lot of farmers and a lot of, you know, people in agriculture and also in tourism, it's sort of often that succession planning, Mick. And is that, yeah, okay. I guess I've hit an interesting point. Is that a challenge?
I'm out of here. I'm out of here.
Fair enough. Yeah. So it's a similar issues, I guess.
Well, can I talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like Linda and I, and Linda should be here sitting here right beside me because she's, you know, I come up with all these wacky ideas, you know. Poor Linda has never come up with a crazy idea in her life, but I tell you what, she's made a lot of them work. You know, she just dreads me. You know, I'll say, hey, you know, I've been thinking. She just feels like just leaving when I say that. But we have two daughters, okay, Stacey and Caitlin. And we started this just a little bit too late because the eldest daughter is a vet, and the youngest daughter a nurse. Now, the daughter who's a vet, she got with her partner, and then later her husband owns a cattle. His parents owned a cattle put again in the Channel Country. So they were actually they were right at the epicenter of all that flooding. So all of that footage that you saw on the aerial footage and photos, actually Joe took that, Stacey's husband. Now they got 150,000 acres down there, and so they're committed. they're committed. We're very, very close as a family. And they're certainly capable of taking over a show like this. And so is Kate and her partner, but they live in Townsville. They have she's a nurse, a couple of little kids, but they're tied up with his business, like not his business, but the business he works for. So they're sort of buying into that. So I don't expect anybody to step into something that they, because I'm not following my father's footsteps. Dad roll over his grave and saw what I'm doing. He's the quietest bloke in the world. But so yeah, we are stumped. There you go, Hurriyet. That is the most difficult issue that we have to face, because we have something here that works. We know it works. It's successful, and we're trying to figure out what do we do. We'd love to pass this opportunity on to somebody else that's building the legacy that we built, and build on it. So I'm not too sure. What we do there, we just, at the moment, we're just in Groundhog Day, just going round and round, because we don't have. We just there's, and a lot of people, to be honest, that's why I really put a positive spin on tourism, because so many people say to me, that they'll say, I don't know how you do it. How do you deal with all those people, like dealing with people and smiling every day? And I said, I keep saying it, keep going back to that's the easiest part. That's the easiest part. But that's the thing that scares most people. But it's the easiest part. It is, that easy is not funny. But that's the thing that does, someone, they love the romance of the Longhorn, they'll love this, they'll love that, but then I say, I don't know about all those people. But it's that's one thing that's one point that I'd like to make out of this here is, go for it. Anybody that's thinking about doing something, don't go crazy. But yeah, don't be scared of the people. They'll love you. They want to be here. They're paying to come and, to come and see you. So that they like you that much, actually paying. So that to me is easy. So can I just sorry, I do this all the time. Okay, I just don't. There's no stop button off on me. But I forgot to mention this. We just didn't wake up one morning and decide to be tourist operators. That sounded, but it'd been something I'd been thinking about a little while, for a year or so, and two things happening in close proximity to each other. My youngest brother, working on the property where I grew up, he was tragically killed in a fall from a horse. That's about the same time we lost Steve Irwin. And I thought, Steve was a man like larger than life, and so was Greg. And I thought, let's just, quit all this procrastinating. Let's just jump in and get it done, And yeah, so, I pay tribute to those two men, and that kind of spurred us into action. It certainly spurred me into action, and here we are. Who would have thought?
Yeah, well, thank you for being here in particular. Hey, Ashley, if you ever thought about a career in tourism, want to leave council? I'm sure she's tempted, Mick. We'll work on her. Dennis, Ashley, sorry, we're gonna.
No, I was gonna say, look, Mick, you and Linda have done such an amazing job out there. I've been watching you guys for a very, very long time, since my TEL days, and I think you've done some wonderful work, and you've definitely put a different experience for Charters Towers and people visiting Charters Towers. So yeah, hats off to you.
So please, if anyone would like to ask a question of Mick, please just raise your hand or let us know some way. But I was going to ask if Lisa or Dennis had anything in particular.
I have a small question. I noticed on your property you have American bison as well, right?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about it? How did you breed them and why?
Yeah, well, we don't breed them. So what we decided to do was, I'll spare you the dad jokes about the, bison, and we decided to buy some and all that sort of stuff. But because they're so iconic, and that, and I really, really love those animals, and we knew that they would be a hit. So we went down to Dubbo and picked up 2 young bison steers about 5 or 6 years ago, and they fit in perfectly with what we do. We have other breeds as well, but so they're all quite rare breeds of cattle and the bison. So and it's an opportunity for people to see bison that wouldn't typically be able to. They'd have to go to Yellowstone or go to somewhere else. So to see them right here is like a little bit of a bonus. And it's always something special when the bison, are running in front of a wagon, or, it's, and it's, I've said to quite a few people, Dennis, if someone said to me, you can't breed Texas Longhorns any longer, what would you like to breed? I said, maybe I'm getting a bit old for it now, but I would love to breed bison. They're just something, they're very intelligent animals. I just love them. I love them. And everyone does, everyone that sees them does too. So.
Yeah,
Wow.
thanks to Meg. And I think that's also a very good point. Looking at Meg's property, I haven't visited it, but it's very well presented. There are a lot of details and a lot of extra experiences, right? It's not just seeing cows, right? It's more wholesome experience. And there is a theme, right? It's a Texas Longhorn, so connects to the American range culture and so on. So I think that's also something that people should be thinking about. Like, what is the story and what is the theme I'm trying to present here? But, yeah,
I agree with that. Sorry, Dan, if I cut you off.
No, I just wanted to congratulate you on your great business and great work you're doing.
Well, if I can just jump in there too, that is, I use another, the old saying we've always heard that we used a million times, think outside the square. Well, I tell people, don't think outside the square or the box. Stick to what you know, and because then the learning curve is a lot less steep, and opportunity could be right under somebody's nose. It's, we were up at the Atherton table, and we went to the strawberry farm, and you look at what they do there, and that's, it's diversification in a different sort of a way. And so I think it's a good idea.
That is a good idea. I actually was there not long ago, but yeah, that's a very good idea. Not to use the jargon, but the value add that they do there as well. You can go pick strawberries and buy strawberry products, and so it's really good. I know you hate the jargon, so we won't do that again to you, Mick. But
we do
Lisa?
it. Sorry, Jennifer, we do it. We value add. I mean, our gift shop is a prime example of that. We have a captive audience, and sometimes those people go into on a spending spree, and sometimes they don't. But it's I think that we are why you have people there. I mean, and I'm sure, regardless of the experience, everybody can do that too. So yeah, I do like some jargon.
That's good. Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to ask Mick?
Just had a quick question because I have started thinking about sort of gold tourism in the area. So your people who come and visit, are they really from Townsville, from Charters Towers? Are they internationals like Denis was talking about? And where do you see the future growth in terms of that?
They're mostly Australians, and we've got a couple here, people today here from the UK, and so that you do get some international, but mostly Australians. Weekends, you'll get people from Townsville. As far as I have no idea where potential growth is, but because it's so different, it does, there's a curiosity value to it, and I didn't mention it before, but we do draw that connection between, I know it's they're Texas Longhorns, but when people realize that, that's what inspired the most iconic, probably one of the most iconic Australian brands, R.M. Williams, certainly Outback brands, the Longhorn, then that's another thing that gets people, interested. But yeah, our market is very diverse. It's mostly, it's mostly baby boomers, but it's not all. We have young families, and we have, special weekends. So, and school holidays are always pretty busy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, so it's like an interesting, different offering for the. Is it the grey nomads? Are they passing through, or are they baby boomers who live in the area?
No, passing through, grey nomads.
Yeah.
Passing through. We have people from every day. We have people from all over. From every part of Australia. We have some groups. I failed to mention a while ago too, when and I was thinking about this when I was looking through, watching some of those slides. When we were closed during COVID, and we were hoping we'd be closed for another month, because matter of fact, we had to stay closed another 2 weeks because we come up with this idea of, hey, let's convert part of our property into a outdoor function venue. So we hooked in doing that, all the while thinking, and they're going to open this place up soon. And we got super busy after that. So we saw a big opportunity there, so instead of just, rolling ourselves up into a ball and complaining, it is what it is. You can't, we couldn't force the issue. And then as soon as the doors opened, people swamped us, and we already had the venue sorted, and we went through that, that regulatory, had our material change of use, all that stuff done with the council, and ticked all the boxes, and so we saw that as we just see opportunities all the time. We've only scratched the surface here. I mean, there's so much untapped potential here, but we're as big as what we want to get. We're only like a mum and dad show, only two of us, and Zita helps us. She's really good, but there's way more potential here than tapped into. But we're at our capacity, and we're happy with that. And that's another thing I tell people too. That are interested in tourism. Set yourself limits. Don't get too, don't over capitalize on things and put too much pressure on yourself, because people do that. They go out and you see, look, this is going to fail, because unless they get all these people they need to keep the doors open, they will crash and burn around them, and then they get a sour taste in their mouth, and then that's the end of them forever. But if they just start small, just work their way through it, then it's sorry, Lisa, I just died. You ask a short question, I'll give you a long answer every time.
No, it's just really interesting. Thanks so much. It's been great to hear. I'll come and visit. I love that part of the region.
We should all come together. We could call it like the Texas Longhorn Zoom. Jen, that's one for you, okay? You organise it, okay?
I'm in. Okay, I'll sign us all up. So that sounds amazing. Thank you again, Mick. Does anyone else have any questions for Mick? I mean, we can sort of revisit. If not, I'll give Lisa the hard task of following you, Mick. But she is more than capable of doing so. Lisa is an associate professor also at JCU. She has she's multidisciplinary, really, but has done a lot around geography and urban spaces. And in particular, Lisa spends a lot of her time working with advising around planning with local governments. Amongst many other things. But I'll throw to you, Lisa, and thank you very much.
All right, so can you hear me okay? Yeah, and you can see my screen. I often have technological difficulties. I'm pleased if I don't. I don't know if why that happens. So thanks so much for inviting me to this event today. I don't usually speak to farmers. I'm kind of a researcher that's interested in livability issues and small cities in Northern Australia. So I tend to work mostly in areas that are, Cairns, Townsville, Darwin sized. However, over the past, I realized this morning, more than 10 years, I've developed a little bit of an interest in small towns in our part of Australia and thinking about how can we keep them vital. And I'm part of, I'm the chair and the founder of what's called the TUD Lab, or the Tropical Urbanism and Design Lab. And I've brought up teams, and I think we've worked on several master plans now. So I'm in urban planning, but urban design is my specialism. And I think it was in 2014, we first started working with the Hinchinbrook Shire and did some work with Ingham, trying to work with the townscape and making it more resilient. And that was sort of the first time a group of us came together. And since then, we've been invited by different councils to work on master plans, including Charters Towers is here. Innisfail, I think, was our second one. I love that photo on the front because I took this photo because I'd been to Innisfail many times, but didn't realize there was a harbor, which was kind of part of the road arrangement problem that I've now fixed. Then we did a series of towns with the Tablelands Regional Council, Malanda, Ravenshoe, and then Milla just last year. But a couple of years ago, we started working with the Charters Towers Council, and we did a couple of plans for Ravenswood and Greenvale. So I'm interested in how can you keep these towns vital? And I guess how it relates to what we're talking about today is if you want successful agribusiness, what happens in the towns that surround those businesses is actually quite important. So basically what I've spent the past couple of days doing is revisiting all of these plans with this question of agritourism in mind. And this is sort of what I've come up with today. So yeah, the team, usually the model of how we do it is myself, and I usually bring along a couple of architects and a landscape architect so that we can have the completed document done to professional standard. But I usually bring along a group of students, which I no longer do because JCU has recently cancelled our planning degree here at JCU, which is quite sad because these master plans that I'm talking about will no longer happen because they were all under that umbrella. So we'd take these students out as part of the design studio. We'd work with local government and industry and the community and try and find out the needs, wants, aspirations of these places. And we did win a commendation in the 2020 Planning Awards. And then in 2021, we got the Minister's Award for Urban Design, which was lovely. We won the Master Plan category for bringing these ideas of urban design and urban vitality to the urban areas of regional towns. And Denis has been along recently on one of these to Milla with me, actually. So as I went through those master plans, I was looking, well, what are some of the key issues that we pulled out in our engagements from the community? One was I think a lot of these things have been talked about already. I guess I'm just packaging them together in a slightly different way with a focus on the town rather than the farm or the industry. So we found in those towns there were workforce and livability challenges, issues of economic diversification and market access that the town could help with, issues of infrastructure and accessibility, important gaps there that were hindering the town from being vibrant, and issues of branding, heritage, and identity that are also quite important to the issues we're talking about today. And I think Denis spoke about this a bit already. And again, I think these issues have been raised, but I'm packaging them in different ways. So really, one of the big issues was attracting and retaining a stable agricultural workforce, or even just a workforce in these towns. And I think somebody raised already the average issue of ages. So these towns have all been losing population. They are aging. So the numbers up at the top are from Milla, which is the most recent one we did. So, if you look at the average age, it's over 60 years. It's 34%. Like, that's a big fraction of the working population. If you take out children, there's just not many people left who are left to work. The median age was often in the mid to late 40s, and 25 to 30% of residents were over 65. So a few of the communities, it depended on which, but somewhere like Innisfail, reliant on that seasonal kind of labor. But actually, those people who came to work as seasonal labor had trouble often finding housing in the towns or even on the farms. And I know there's quite a bit happening in that space. But even if they did stay, and even if they wanted to stay and live in the town long term, well, actually, there's issues about essential goods that aren't always available in these towns, like groceries or going to the doctor and getting your medication. And then finally, even I think it was in both Ravenshoe and in Greenville, potable water was a problem. And I was saying, well, do you really need us to do your master planning? What you really need is, basic needs, potable water. And then, of course, there's issues like aging infrastructure, buildings, roads, a lack of amenity that would attract people to stay and live in those places. And these are all things that have affected the livability of those places. So as part of what we do, we go and, design up we do the community consultations, and then we design up some solutions. This is why I bring the architects to do up the drawings to help us visually communicate a lot of those ideas. So we want to enhance the livability of those towns, improve the recreational spaces, create greener environments, and address housing. And so the top here is one of the plans from the Malanda master plan, and just a few things that I'll point out. Of course, you can see the big milk factory there, so we know it's a dairy town. But this Jack May Park, can everybody see my cursor on the image? Yeah, okay, thank you. Now I know who's watching. There's the Jack May Park here. One of the really important things to the community was having a pump track for the young people. And that is actually really important, because if you don't have a town that is attractive to people who are of childbearing age and can imagine their children growing up there, then that's a bit of an issue. And I think Malanda is a very special place because the schools are vibrant, the schools are growing. I'm not saying that the pump track did that for sure, but I think that sort of emphasis on making sure young people are happy is really important in those kind of green spaces. Also, they're really lucky that they had an excellent town planning 100 years ago, and they had a town park. And so putting in a community garden was a suggestion up the back here, and a youth center in the old Mitre 10, which I think is actually now a gym. It didn't end up being a youth center. It's always nice to go back to these places. There was a council depot right in the middle of town. I don't think anything has happened here, but you have an aging population. You could put some mixed use and residential development into the town to help keep it vibrant. And then over on the far, the right here is a co-working and well-being center, which was suggested to sort of have hot desks and just where do you share ideas about what could be innovative in your town. On the bottom is the Milla Master Plan, and we've just finished that, working with the community to think about you know, a couple of things. You know, these are the two residential areas that we think could be developed and sequenced through time. The ones up the top are more sort of rural lifestyle blocks, and the one at the bottom could be a little bit more dense. But we also work with them in the middle of town to think about how can you offer some accommodation that could be for backpackers, farm workers, and make it more mixed use so that it would always have some viability. But I think the most important thing the community asked us to do is this green walk, which goes to the waterfall, because most people who go to Milla Falls bypass the town entirely. And that's a real missed opportunity to learn about the agricultural and timber history of the area. So if they can get that walk going, that'll be a bit of a game changer for what's happening. So it's taking those opportunities and helping use them to make the town more livable. So I guess in terms of economic diversification and market access, there's kind of an over-reliance on traditional agriculture and limited market opportunities. So what I suggest here is that many regional towns have historically strong agricultural bases, but acknowledge the need to diversify, which is what we're talking about today. And this diversification creates new market opportunities. And, you know, what can we do with those? So I guess the point I wanted to make with economic diversification is that actually that's been happening around here up in the tablelands in North Queensland for a long time. And once you listen to those stories, you know, Ravenshoe and Milla have diversified. They were timber. Once the timber was gone, they diversified and did beef, and then they did dairy, and now they're doing tourism. So diversification is already something that's been happening. Ravenswood isn't an agricultural town, it's a mining town, but what I found really interesting there was that they're moving away from that boom and bust of mining and thinking about more diverse bases, like having a mining community that actually lives in town rather than driving in and out of Townsville. And they're also exploring with the regional tourism market. I heard there were good markets there the other day. One of my friends went, which sounds fantastic. So there's underutilized potential. And I think, oh, there's Shaley strawberries right there at the bottom. There's Innisfail, you know, diversifying a bit of tourism because their Art Deco is pretty amazing. And the Jarama farms, that mushroom farms that are down near Ingham, as a part of, you know, what's the new kind of hobby farm, not hobby farm, but boutique sort of farming that can be doing something quite different. And I won't say too much here because Denis has already talked about farm stays and food trails and other things that could be happening in that space. So in our master plans, we usually say, you know, it's really important to promote agritourism. You can do it in a couple of different ways. The food trails, like Denis suggested here, but also markets. So in the rejuvenation of the green spaces and the parks in these towns, just making sure that there's spaces for pop-up market stalls so that there's an opportunity for people to come and taste the produce of the area, and there's opportunities there for First Nation stories about plant use, and that might be for medicine or bush tucker. And I think Denis is right in saying, you know, people are looking for stories, right, and they're collecting stories. Hosting events is really important. There's the tropical what's it called? Feast of the Senses, you know, tropical fruit festivals, bush tucker, produce things, that these are really important things to have a calendar for. And they provide an outlet for where you can sell fresh produce, but also kind of showcase what's happening in terms of sustainable agriculture in the region. And just stimulating those local enterprises so that those provide jobs. I think that's the Gallo Dairy plate there on the end. And I know that Tablelands Council has been running some agritourism workshops, and it is really important. It's hard to do these things on your own. Another big area that we found an issue for towns was that there was kind of problems with inadequate infrastructure for town attractiveness and how people access and the logistics of getting around these areas. So the efficiency of agribusiness relies on a robust transport network and public infrastructure. And regional towns face, challenges in terms of these areas, but there's a lot that can be done. So in terms of road networks, access and wayfinding, I've just got the example here of Greenvale up at the top. They've just got their new road finished, the highway's finished, but actually if you have a look, people don't stop, and there's not really good areas for the trucks to stop. So we tried to design in some ways so that RVs, passing trucks could stop and go in, and redesign the entrance to the town so that it actually looked like an inviting and an appealing place to actually stay. And the same with Millamilla. That's one of my students did up this drawing of what the entrance of Millamilla could look like. Because again, 350,000 people are driving past this entrance and not going in. And if you do bring them in and you tell them the story about Mangali or the story about timber or something else, then they might stay and spend a little bit more money in the area. Same with Innisfail. That was a bit of the problem. I think I'll talk more about that in a moment. Yes, right here. So, working with wayfinding, and as Dennis said, letting tourists know what's on and how to get there. But a lot of the highway bypasses of these towns have been really part of their demise. And, trying to figure out ways to guide people through design to those places is really important. So you need to upgrade the roads, you need to enhance the signage, but you also need to make sure there's dedicated parking, as I said. I've got here, so as you drive into Innisfail, there's a park there, but it doesn't seem very inviting. So, you need to put some RV parking along here and then bring people to walk up Edith Street and to the Esplanade and find out, actually, there is a working harbour there. And here's the cane cutters memorial there. And that's a pretty interesting part of the agricultural history of the area. It's a place that gets a lot of rain and the streets are moldy. So we suggested to put a little covered walkway here for the elderly population who can't cross as quickly, and it might be a bit moldy, clean it. Although I think they put it down here in the end. We suggested up there so they could draw people up. But anyway, it's their town. And we changed the direction of this road, because what would happen was people would come up Edith Street and then not know where to go because that road was the other way, and then they would just leave and turn around. So now you can drive straight through and up to the Esplanade, and there's somewhere to park right there. So just reconfiguring things like that help there's the covered walkway down there at the bottom, which they have put in with a little bit of an Art Deco theme. And finally, this issue, I think, was already talked about by Dennis, but those issues of branding, cohesive branding and interpretation of that agricultural heritage is really important. It's not that easy to find out that Malanda had the world's longest milk run at one point of time. Even though there's this cane cutter court here in Innisfail, that history of sugarcane farming isn't a story that's that easy to access. And then, Ravenshoe is a nice cold place. I always think about, Tasmania is so good at telling people to come down for air, but you should go up to Ravenshoe for air because it's nice and cool there. So, there's underrepresented agricultural stories in those towns that tourists are very interested in, but there's also missed branding opportunities. So, we suggested lots of different things, on the top here at Malanda, have some street furniture that tells that story of the dairy. At the museum in Millamilla, actually, don't just store it full of junk, curate it and curate those special pieces so that we can understand those individual things as part of a bigger story rather than just everything in one space. Have pop-up markets, convince people to do scenic drives, to go to places like Mangali and make it easily signed. And so that people want to have those. So, exactly what you're talking about already, but making sure that the infrastructure is there for that to happen easily. So, I think what I was just trying to get across is that towns are really important to the economic basis of the regions, and they are part of that agro diversification, that those you know, the town's infrastructure is really important. You need to have it for the residents and the rural community and more widely. There are big issues about keeping populations from declining, stopping them from aging, keeping young people, and telling them there's lots of really interesting things you can do that, and work in tourism if it's, you know, if you don't want to, if your kids don't want to run your farm or whatever. And that those improvements in, you know, renovating the parks and providing better pump tracks or, you know, walkable streets, those things are really important for people who live there, but also for people who visit. So yeah, and agritourism can immerse those visitors in that farming heritage. So that is it from me.
Wow, thank you. But just added a whole heap of other places for me to go and see, although I've seen a few, but not enough. And I guess that's it. There's all these hidden gems. I completely understand your love of small towns because they're always full of hidden gems. So I will throw to anybody for questions, if anybody has anything in particular. And probably you, Ashley, I guess I'll keep throwing to you, but I think it's were you very familiar with some of what Lisa's been doing in Charters Towers?
Yes, so I haven't been a part of those projects, but I have received the documentation for both Ravenswood and Greenvale. So, and we have been going back to the Ravenswood one with our facilities team, so which is fantastic. It's not just a document that sits there. We are referring back to it constantly. Yeah, and I will have to say that Hayley is a big fan of yours, Lisa. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of hers as well. It's interesting. She's a community planner, but she actually kind of gets town planning, which is good because there's and I think there's just something in the chat here about, you know, it's really disappointing there's no planners because I think you don't have a planner now at Charters Towers. Like this shortage, nobody had any idea like how bad it's going to get because we still have students now, but the last batch I'm teaching out right now. This is the last year.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow. We do have exciting news. We do have a planner starting on Monday. So we've got one. Yeah. But it has been a very long wait. So yeah, we're very excited. Yeah, there'll be lots of balloons and stuff on Monday morning for him.
I wonder if I know who it is.
Oh, and Timna, sorry, Timna. Yeah, Timna's a planner as well.
Timna, did you want to jump in on this? Did you? I'll allow you to. You can open your mic if you wish to.
Still can't hear you, Timna.
Oh, sorry. No, we can't. We can see you speaking. Sorry. Yeah, I do go dance move. That would be awesome.
Interpretive dance.
We can almost hear you.
We can almost hear you.
My
now we can
got
hear
down. Sorry about that. How very unprofessional. Thank you very much. This has been a really, really worthwhile presentation to listen to. Everyone was very impressive. I'm learning a lot because I'm from Southeast Queensland and haven't had exposure to rural and regional planning in the sense that I'm getting it now. So it's been awesome. The Longhorn Tour. Side. Thank you. The Longhorn Tour is actually on my must-do list. It's sitting on. I was telling Ash before that at the little flyer is centre place in my fridge. The only thing I have in my fridge because it's the only thing I need to get to when our new planner starts. So you'll see us soon, hopefully. No, it's been an awesome place. There's so much promise and so much genuine, warmth and everything from the community and from the business owners and from the agricultural community. It's just an incredible space, and I just want to help try and do whatever it is I can do and whatever I can help council do and Ashley do in terms of just supporting and continuing to help things grow. I mean, obviously within our confines that we have, but do whatever we can actually do, because it's just such a beautiful area. It really is. So thank you.
I'm-
Sorry, I'm just rabbiting now.
Yeah, Tim, I have a question because I think the state government planners were having a look at sort of rural subdivision. They were doing a big study around that. Do you know anything about that? Because it has implications for what farmers do, right? You don't want to just subdivide and sell it all off for housing.
Well, you don't want to lose the agricultural land and all that sort of stuff. You've just got to balance those priorities. Yes, I haven't heard anything further on there. I know that there was some talk about land tenure review, particularly for any sort of government, state government-owned land closer to settlements, to try and free that up for potential housing opportunities. I haven't actually, don't know whether they were having some forums. I'll have to get back in touch. I'm lucky I've got the lady who is the state planner is someone I used to work with. So I can sort of reach out to her and ask her some fairly direct questions when she has free time, because she's always very busy. But yeah, no, I haven't heard anything further about that. They've been encouraging us to put in for various grants that are going at the moment. They're trying to do everything they can to try and activate housing, but also try and balance, obviously, the broader regional interests and the broader the needs of the community and the needs of the population as a whole. We can't just throw everything down the path of housing. You've still got to feed people. You've still got to employ people, and et cetera, preaching to the converted, I'm sure, Lisa. I'm really interested in streetscape improvements and things like that, but obviously I'm coming from a South Queensland environment into an environment that I'm still not familiar with, so there's a whole heap of learning there for me as well. And also, yeah, with the planners, and this is just me being very selfish, it would be really good if they could be resurrecting or doing something with those paraplanner courses if they're not going to continue to do, planning courses at JCU. And if you do have any young planners who are interested in coming out to charters, we will be advertising for planners in the next couple of months. We've got another planner role.
That's good. Some of the students who worked on Greenvale and Ravenswood with me are graduating this year, so I should tell them that.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly, they're all being snapped up. They're all working state government and council already. Yeah.
But yeah, no, if someone has been out here, or I mean, there's so much opportunity here. There's such a diverse range of opportunities in that space. And if I had been a young planner, and because I was planning when I was actually a young family when I first started, but if I was a planner starting today, I would love to come to charters, because you get everything from heritage and agriculture and commercial stuff through to the renewables, like the range of the mining, everything. It's just, and the opportunities to work in compliance, the opportunities to work with the plumbing guys and get to know the building things. You just don't get that scope. You go and start to work somewhere down south in a big organisation, you're thrown into one team and you might do houses and carports for 2 years. Yeah. And that's all you do.
Yeah, it's the joy of working regionally. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you get to do the DA and the policy. It's brilliant. Sorry, I'm hogging all the limelight now, but get off my high horse.
I'm glad you're there.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to touch base with you at some point, Lisa, too. Thank you.
Right, that's fantastic. Does anybody else have?
I've got a question to Lisa. Lisa, thank you for a great presentation, and I think it's really the backdrop in which the diversification takes place, and really assists or doesn't desist from it, if you like. One of the things in my presentation was frustration from the farmers around the lack of coordination around infrastructure, and being an ex-CEO of a council. We didn't have the rate base. I was CEO of Tablelands Regional Council. We didn't have the rate base to be able to put in all the amenities and infrastructure, even though we had the will. And also, there was often a lack of coordination between the state and the, digital connectivity, the MBNs, etc. Did you get a sense of whether that's improving? Because that's a really key part, that infrastructure planning, amenity planning, town planning, that supports workers, that supports people like Mick's work. It needs a coordinated approach. And at the moment, everyone's sort of, yes, there are conversations. We did talk to state government, but the planning and action was not coordinated. It was still separate. So I'm just wondering whether you had a sense of that at all.
Well, I have a sense that the Tablelands Regional Council still is trying to get rid of the assets and those community bits of infrastructure like small town halls, which are, you know, really vitally important hub of the town. But I can also see the point that they're actually very expensive to maintain, like in Malanda. You know, I think that's been closed now, that hall now for years. I don't get up as often as I should, but I'm pretty aware of some of the issues. And then I know that we've been evolving the master plans over time, and so they're looking a bit fancier every time. And I think one of the things that Tablelands said to us with the Miller plan was that actually the quality of the visuals needed to be dumbed down because they weren't willing to provide that level of infrastructure for this kind of place. So I think it's pretty commonly still an issue. And, you know, who's going to maintain them? So we were making some suggestions that there should be community working bees, like somewhere in Milla, mold is a really big issue, and it really affects the look of the town. But it's quite expensive, you know, especially if there's asbestos in the facades, to bring people out to clean those. So if the community could get on board and do a little bit more of that. But again, that's a problem if you have an aging community, you know, and even the garden club in Milla, you know, they keep all those beautiful flowers growing as you enter into the town, but they're all also senior citizens now, and they don't see who's going to take over that role because volunteering isn't a sort of a culture of volunteering in the community. So the issues are huge. And I always feel it's so unfair to make local councils have to deal with all this. It's just, so you can almost understand in WA why they say, shut them down, no more towns, you know, let's just, you know, it's too expensive to do this, which is crazy because of all of the rich agricultural histories of this part and timber histories and other kinds of mining histories, but also the way that those towns are like the reservoirs of that culture and what it could become. And, you know, if we've got these longhorns and you've got this really interesting kind of innovations around mushrooms and different things, then they can maintain that vitality. But, you know, does council really have to do it all? I wouldn't want to be the CEO.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you, Lisa. We're kind of right on time now. But if anyone needs to run off, please do. But I don't think we can leave this meeting. And again, thank you to everyone who presented and for attending. But I don't think we can leave it without a dad joke from Mick. Come on, Mick. Time to shine. You have to yeah.
Okay. No, I'm gonna disappoint you because what I'm gonna, you know, it's forums like this here. I just listened to, you know, watching Lisa's presentation. Every single thing that I've heard today applies so much to, you know, to shows like ours. It's incredible. Like, you know, even not town planning, but property planning on a micro level here. I want to, you know, where everything goes, you know, and how everything presents, and you know, where do you park this, and then there's dust there, and there's all. So it's almost like a gold mine of that's a bit of a pun for you, of knowledge, you know, that, you know. So I'd have loved to have had something like this here at our, you know, that we could have tapped into back when we started. And, you know, of course, you don't have to take on board every single thing, and some things don't apply, but it's, you know, from an operator's point of view, and someone's been there and done that. That's why I was nodding along watching, you know, Denis's presentation. Yep. And it was same with all the presentations, you know. So, you know, so I'm just really thankful that I could hopefully, you know, add something to it, and, you know, grateful that you invited me, really. So that's about as good as that's better than a dad joke, isn't it? But we'd love to have you all here. You know, I can
absolutely,
see it.
yep.
I can see it.
I think
you know.
it's on everyone's bucket list for now, for sure. So again, thank you, everybody. I'm hoping that I'll have a recording of this available. I just have to learn how to do that, but I will if, you know, we can all adopt and adapt. So thank you very much. Stay in touch. And it was fabulous to see and hear from everybody. So thank you very much.
I agree too. Thank you so much for organising it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
All right.
all.